Hey, welcome back to the Powered by Football podcast. I'm just opening this episode where me and Tom Byrne of the Brisbane Lions recap the APFA Club Championships by noting that his microphone had a lower quality in the first couple minutes or so. So just push on through and eventually he gets a bit clearer and it stops cutting out. So sorry about that. And without further ado, let's get into the podcast.
My name is Thomas Byrne. I am 25 years old and I play for Lions FC in the Queensland competition.
So, Tom, welcome to the podcast. This is our recap of the APFA Club Championships. And I'd just like to ask you, how did you get involved with powerchair football?
It's a little bit of a longer story. A little bit of background about me. I grew up in regional Queensland. I didn't grow up in Brisbane. So it was very rare for me to be around other people in wheelchairs and people with disabilities. And so I started going to Montrose Respite during my school holidays, which was held in Brisbane. And
Hmm.
I started meeting all the lads here in Brizzy, and a lot of them were starting to play a lot of power chair sports. And they knew that I was big into sport. So it sat around for a bit, and then eventually, once I moved to Brisbane for university, they knew that I had to come on down. And yeah, it was only a couple of months after I started living in Brisbane that I was playing my first power chair football minutes, and it was just a revelation, something I'd never done before as a child, which I was finally able to do at the age of 19. And I absolutely loved it. It's why I'm still here.
Yeah, like I think it's such an amazing sport, and I think you've done so well to build your way up in the sport. And during the tournament this week, you mentioned your title as the voice of powerchair football in Australia. Now, before I get into the question that I've written down and sent to you, I need to ask: is this a self-proclaimed title, or is this something other people have given to you?
Well, half the title is titles that people like things that people have given me, and then half of it I've had to sign. Because I've always heard, whenever you think of, to me at least, when I think of the voice of power chair football, I immediately think of Tony Jackson from the US.
Mm.
Um, and then people started comparing me to him, and I immediately said, no, 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 I know I'm good, but I'm not Tony, certainly not yet. So I have had to make sure that I say the voice of power chair football in Australia, because I definitely don't want to cross cross paths with Tony on that front. So kind of self, but only because I've put that little asterisk on the end of it. But I've had people say on the Bruce maybe this week I got the Phil Gould of power chair football, although I believe that was more of a sledge than a compliment.
Mm.
So yeah,
And I think the main question that I wanted to ask about your role as a commentator is how did you get involved?
kind of sheer luck, if anything. So the first time that I commentated power chair football was actually before I even played power chair football. I was in Brisbane in 2018, and it happens to be when the state championships were on, the tournament where it was actual states versus states, and they needed somebody to jump on the mic because they were struggling to beat people. And one of my mates and our teammates. So yeah, like Zach Burley, who was my friend and then became my teammate, he threw me under the bus yelling like to have a chat. And then I was just strapped on a headset, having only seen the game for about an hour and a half. And as it turned out, they had me commentating I think it was a semi-final between WA and New Zealand, and I wasn't the greatest. I'll be pretty honest. I knew nothing about the sport. I'd never commentated before. Like I'd done plenty of public speaking through high school, but I'd never actually commentated a live sporting event, and it was a real. I liked it, but I didn't think I'd ever do it again. So it was a couple of years later when I went to maybe my second or third club championships. It was the first one that had cameras put on it for a while. And again, they had the microphone. It wasn't being used a lot of the time. And then I ended up I think mum and dad said, hey, you did it a couple of years ago. You like chatting. Why don't you give it a go? And so I gave it a go again. And this time I was a lot better. because I knew what I was looking at and I knew what I was actually doing. And I think I commentated most of that week, and I think I may have done the final that year. I don't 100% remember. I'm pretty sure I did. I think I did it with Tristram, because we had to pass the microphone between us because there was only one.
Mm.
But then each year I just kept coming back and kept getting better at it. And then I volunteered myself to do the World Cup in 2023, and I got absolutely wonderful reviews about what I was doing. And then the last 2 years, when we've had club championships up in Brisbane, I've been organising the media team, and it's been a truly wonderful experience. And if you enjoy just having a chat and talking about something you love, like I do, then commentary comes naturally,
Mm.
even though it's a very daunting thing, which I know that you and I have had discussions about, Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good fun, and I really encourage everyone to give it a go.
Yeah. One other question which I am bringing to you on the cuff because I think it's funnier if I didn't prep you for this. Do you feel at all threatened by the host of the Powered by Football podcast, Jackson Taylor, as the voice of powerchair football in Australia?
Let's just say that I am grateful that he is presently a good 800 kilometres away, and so no, I don't feel threatened, Jax.
Okay, that's good. Great to hear that, Tom. Moving away from the commentary side and over to the competition itself, how do you think it went?
So I'll start with knowing what questions are coming up. I'll separate this answer out a little bit.
Mm.
From an organising standpoint, which I was reasonably well involved in, I think this year's tournament was a complete success.
Mm.
We upgraded to having 2 courts for the first time, which from all accounts went really well. We were able to fit in 10 rounds of football in the group stage, plus the knockouts and the positional games on the last day. So everyone got a lot of football. It was very exhausting. Everyone was very tired by the end. And we had some challenges. The lift went down at Nissan Arena for most of the week, but it got back up in time for the rains to arrive, which we were grateful for. But other than that, I think we did a superb job of running this tournament. I think the standard of football was pretty good, and I think everyone who watched the tournament was treated to some very exciting football. And I think certainly I am proud of everything that happened in this tournament over the last week or so.
Yeah, nice. I think it was a really good week. I had a lot of fun, and I think it was really good to be involved, obviously, with you in the booth, commentating and playing as well. So I think it went quite well.
Yeah, and everyone I had the pleasure of sharing the microphone with up in the booth was wonderful, and I think we all had a really good chemistry up there. And certainly from that standpoint, it was great.
Was there a particular game you enjoyed commentating the most?
I still don't think I've come down from the adrenaline high of the third place playoff strikers and Football St George.
Yes.
That the way that the strikers were able to come back twice, get it to extra time, and then the insane plays by Football St George to get that game across the line. That was certainly the best game that I commentated. The only other game I think deserves a mention was Melbourne or Newcastle 3. But from memory, I was maybe in speed testing during that game, so I didn't actually get to see much of it. But certainly those were the two games that I think were the standouts in terms of the excitement and the drama of football.
Yeah, the latter game you mentioned there was me and Josh Ryan commentating, and that was a very exciting game to narrate.
Yes,
And
I'm a little bit jealous that you got to be a part of that one.
what I thought we'd do for this sort of recap of nationals is sort of go team by team and ask one question and sort of just talk about each of their positions and what went right, what went wrong, or a certain talking point. So, we'll start from the bottom with your beloved Brisbane Lions, Tom. So, why do you think the Brisbane Lions struggled in this competition?
As a team, we knew we were going to be up for a rough week. We for many years, and I'll be a little bit open about this. For many years we were like we were a solid team, but Tristan Peters was our main focal point, and the whole team was built around him. which is fine. Many clubs do that. But then Tristram, last year he had his injury, which meant that he wasn't playing, and then this year he's been playing for Melbourne City. And so we've had to completely rebuild ourselves in a post-Tristram world. It's exposed a lot of the kind of flaws in each of our individual games that we need to work on, and we've made decisions and commitments to work on those, and I think the future is good at Lions FC. It's just this week was quite tough because we were hoping to get maybe some results out of the week, and we ended up not quite getting the results we were hoping for, and then we were kind of doing the same things over and over, and we started maybe falling into some bad habits that we thought we'd got rid of. But yeah, like it was, I wouldn't say we struggled in the sense of we didn't underperform, but I also think that we know that we would have done better. There were chances in certain games. I think we had 2 or 3 1-0 losses where the goals all came in the last 5-10 minutes that, maybe if things hadn't gone differently, we could have salvaged the draw and at least put some more points on the board. And certainly as well, I've just pulled up the table, we only scored 2 goals across the whole week, which isn't, for an 11-game tournament, you don't really want to be down only scoring 2 goals as a team when we would like to be a lot more attacking.
Yeah, of course. I think, moving over to the team that you guys lost to in the 9th place playoff, the Adelaide Comets, firstly, do you think that was a fair result for them?
I think they deserved to get something out of the week. Like, they conceded 39 goals across the group stage, which is a hard slog going 10 games and not getting much out of it in terms of scoreboard. So I think they certainly deserve something out of the week to get a win on the last day in the shootout. In terms of the match, though, I haven't seen the footage back, but it felt like we had more of the possession in that game, and we had probably more of the better chances in that game. So I don't know if... I think we probably should have put them away and got the win like we did in the group stage. But it's a credit to Adelaide that they were able to hold on and learn from their loss to us earlier in the week. Held on, got it to the drama that is the shootout, and then they converted their penalties and we did not. So ultimately, they deserve to be ahead of us.
Was it just nerves, do you think, that you didn't convert personally, or what was behind that?
I really don't know. Like, I actually felt confident heading into the shootout. Lions, we were in this exact situation last season against the then Wanderers Wasps team. That was a very long shootout where everyone took 2 shots. I took 3.
Wow.
And it ended up being that our team lost because I missed the 3rd shot. Everyone missed their first shot, everyone scored their second, and then I missed the 3rd. I didn't feel nervous at that point, and I did have a very slight bit of practice on the rest day on Tuesday, and hit a really good penalty in that, like just a couple of inches off the post, exactly what you should have done.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, just did not replicate it in that shootout. Both the first time I wanted to go left and it hit it straight up the centre, and then got called back because the keeper, which from memory was Jono, he jumped early. So then I had a second chance and thought, nope, we're going to hit to the right post like we did earlier in the week. And it attempted it and completely botched it. And at that point, we were 2-0 down in the shootout. We knew it was pretty much over.
Yeah. So that, that shootout win clinched Adelaide Comets into 9th. So I think we'll jump up to 8th position now. And my team, the Western Sydney Wanderers, we had a bit of a fall from grace, you could say, Tom, after winning last year's competition. So what do you think the Wanderers need to bounce back?
I think, like, I'll start with, I don't think it was a fall from grace in the sense of, like, I think you guys did well this week. Obviously, last year's successes, I don't want to deride anything that happened last year, but I think you guys had, like, the impact of Zach Dickey last season could not be underestimated. He was an incredible player who lifted everyone across the tournament with his just his charisma. He was an incredible bloke, and I've heard he might be with you guys for Club World Cup later in the year. Is that
That
true,
it, that
Jax?
that may or may not be correct. He will be in Paris. He is playing a competition in America and getting on a plane that day, coming to Paris and playing that day.
Oh, that is some supreme dedication.
Yeah,
But I think you guys you learnt a lot from Zach Dinkley. I can see that in your play this year. The learnings that you took from him were very helpful, and I think the results didn't quite show it, but I think you guys played well. And I think you should be happy with that. So I think you just need to stick on that path. You've developed a good path that Zach Dinkley has shown you, and you're now going for it. And so
yeah,
I think the results will come. Just need time, dedication, and practice, and those are kind of the three, four things that make any good football team to me is time, dedication, time, and practice. If you get those three things right, you should do well and you should get some results.
yeah. And I think it was still a fun week I found, and I gave it my all. I want to, like, just personally, I want to get your opinion. The sort of shift of my position from goalie to playing up front. Like, did you see much of a change in how the team performed with that?
I think, and this is, I'm gonna use by analogy here. I'm gonna come back to Lions for a sec because it's where I know the most. It can be hard when you're a team where a lot of you have very good experience in goals at the back and not as much experience up front.
Mm,
And the term that I use is we're all a bunch of goalkeepers masquerading as outfielders.
yeah.
Because we are, right? Like I played on the wing most of the week, but until 12, 18 months ago, I had played 4 years straight at the back.
Mm,
And it can be hard coming out, even though there's not as much of a shift in terms of technique when you compare to the running game.
mm,
You know, a goalkeeper in the running game is the guy using his hands.
yeah.
Um, just positioning is so different, and the way that you strike the ball as an outfielder is so incredibly different to the fundamentals of being at the back and touching the ball. So I think like the shift, yeah, I think it was definitely a positive move, and I think that if you can encourage, even long term, if you can encourage players to be a very multi-dimensional player, if you can encourage players, even though they might be the player wearing the shirt, you need to be able to play outfield as well.
Mm,
It's a concept that the English developed in their team. They used the double pivot in their formation. And basically, the premise of that is they have two goalkeepers, right?
mm,
Who are actually what we would think of as the middle players. They just call them the goalkeepers. And they say one of them happens to wear the shirt, one of them doesn't. But they are so technically gifted that you would think of them as a middle in the Australian context, right? As the middle of the triangle, and then the goalkeeper just kind of being there as your cover.
mm.
No, they don't have that because they don't need that because their goalkeepers are so technically gifted on the ball in ways that we've just never explored before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Thank you for that. And moving on to the team that beat the Wanderers in the seventh place playoff, Auckland City FC, and Cooper Pellini, who had an amazing tournament this week. He was recognised as a player's player. So I just want to ask about him. How crucial do you think he is to this team?
I absolutely love Cooper. I don't think there will ever be a day that I will ever not love Cooper Pellini. He is an incredible player, especially at the age that he came through from New Zealand. He is wonderful, and the impact he had on that team this year when you compare to when he was playing at other clubs like Football St George in the past, it was incredible to see. And I certainly think that, with a view towards APFA Cup happening in October here in Brisbane,
Hmm.
um, he will be influential in that New Zealand side going forward, certainly obviously now, but also down the line. Like with New Zealand, they're able to find themselves a handful more players and train them up better than they've been able to previously. I know they have got some big logistical issues over there at the moment that we hope are fixed in the near future. Like, Cooper can really lead a team and lead that New Zealand team towards big success down the road. And I really hope he does, because he's such a top bloke and an incredible player on the field, and he deserves the awards that he got this week. Like, he had a fantastic tournament, and I really hope he does well in the future.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think it's really interesting. I think Cooper really shone this week, and it was really, really annoying to play against him. I think you would have found the same, Tom.
Yeah, no,
And
he certainly controls the field out there.
yeah, he's definitely got a big influence. So moving on to the sixth place team, Tom, in Hills United. You know, they brought a lot of reinforcement in this competition to try and up their, ability to compete. They had both Sam Yucatil and Abigail Bolt coming in, but they just weren't able to crack the semi-finals. What do you think wasn't clicking for them?
So I think there's a couple of things at play with Hills United. They've had a big transition over the last couple of months with Matt Mallows and James Mallows now becoming the captain and coach respectively of that team. There's a lot of change, and when you have a lot of change in a club, you might not get results right away. And then we add in that they had two players come to be part of the tournament here in Brisbane that haven't played with them before. And what ends up happening is most of the other teams in the tournament are teams that have played together for a number of years. They know each other inside out. Whereas half your team are players, one from overseas, one from Brisbane, who may not have even spoken to most of the players in that team before, because I think they had a Seam and they had Prayag, both of whom was their first club championships from memory. And so you've got a team that's never worked together, so you've got to build all of those, connections with each other over the course of the week. And it's a problem that all teams who bring marquee players in. Obviously, in the case of Hills United here, they had Abigail as their primary marquee, and then they had Sam brought in to help with coverage, because they would have only had 4 players had Sam not come across. They needed that depth throughout the week, because I know that Matt at one point had a chair malfunction. I think his batteries gave up in one of the games, and so he couldn't even play. And so, it wasn't so much that at least in my understanding, they didn't so much choose to have a bunch of reinforcements. It was they needed them in order to make it through the week. But the players they have are good players and help them out a lot, and I'm sure everybody involved in that would have learned heaps. So I just think that the results on the week mostly came down to that everybody there was either new to the tournament or new to the team. And when you've got all of that coming together, sometimes it's a masterstroke and works perfectly, and then other times it just doesn't quite work out in the end, and you do all right, but you probably could have done better. But that said, I look at the teams on the table, and I think that 6th was about a fair result for them.
Yeah, and I think during your answer there, you spoke about how important it is for teams to have played together for a long time and to build up that, sort of connection as a team. And I think no team in this competition defines that more than Sydney FC. Just growing up together, all these kids, and their young core shone so well for them this week. Like, how do you think these kids playing with each other for so long benefits them?
It's amazing to see the development of these Sydney FC kids over the years. I think there was a club championships down in Sydney the year that I was on loan to Strikers FC, and we played them in it was like a 7th versus 8th playoff, and because it's a playoff match involving me for somewhere in the bottom of the table that has to go to penalties, because they all do. I think we got up in that shootout. I was on the bench at the time. And I just remember the Sydney FC kids being absolutely heartbroken that they worked so hard to get it to pens and lost it. But you could see at that moment that if those kids stuck together, that they were going to go a long way. And we saw that in particular last year, when they went on that run, got to the semis, and played really good football. And they played good football again this year. And obviously they didn't get the same results. They just fell outside of the top four this year. But having such a good core of young players playing together from a young age, and presumably these kids will stick together for a while, so they all seem to be really good mates, and I don't think any of them are going to be leaving each other in the near future. That team's going to go far. That Sydney FC team will go far. I don't think it'll be long before we start saying how, we start seeing them really pushing for trophies, either at the New South Wales level or even potentially at the national level, because they are a really solid group of kids. And I think we do talk a lot about the kids, I think we need to give a good mention to Chris Suffield, their experience at the back that he offers to them, and his mentorship that he gives that team is incredible. I think because of that, Suff's probably the legacy that he'll leave on the game, which, if and when he retires, which I don't think is going to be for a while. Yeah, I think Suff's has still got a few more years in him, but he will probably go down the books as one of the best players, both on and off the court for Australia, because of the impact that he's going to leave on these kids down the road.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very exciting prospect for Sydney FC, and it'll be very interesting to see where they're led to next. Now, on to the semi-finalists now. We're moving into fourth. Now, the Brisbane Strikers, as we mentioned before, had a very, very thrilling match in that third place playoff against Football St George, Tom, pushing them all the way to extra time. But I just want to know, why do you think they weren't able to get the result in the end?
It's a difficult one to say. Every team has their different ways that they want to play football, and sometimes, when we see those ways of football that they want to play, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And they kept Josh Merkis off the field in the first half of that game. And Jack, you and I questioned this at the time, is, what do they know that we don't? And it actually ended up kind of working, because it meant that Josh was fresher as the match went on. And I think, part of that can also be that the head games that can happen when, you look over and the team is in the contest, and you look over and see a national level player is sitting there ready to go. Like that can be quite confronting, and I think that really helped them. That little head dynamic really helped strikers in that game. But I think one of the things that strikers will face going down the road, and this is not in any way a criticism of strikers, is that the Queensland League isn't as strong as the New South Wales League. Like, I know that over the years, I look back at 2018's National Championships, Queensland were the champions that year. Queensland had a very strong team, and now we are 6.5 years down the road, and New South Wales, I think if there was a state championships held, say in 6 months' time, I don't think Queensland would be. We'd probably make the final still, although Victoria might actually be out there as well. But Queensland has gone backwards, and even though the Strikers have continued their dominance in the Queensland League, they're not getting the same level of competition from the other teams in the league, which means that when the pressure does come on, like we saw in that third place playoff, they don't have that experience of having to dig deep and play those really big matches, because they don't get as many compared to the New South Wales League, where you've got 5 teams, all of whom are really good. Like, you've got 5 teams, 2 of them in the finals, 4 of them in the top 6. That's something that strikers only get when they go to the national championships. And if anything, the thing that would help strikers the most is the rest of Queensland developing and really pushing them to the limit, so that they can be properly challenged. So when it comes to these big tournaments, they have all that experience and they have all that they've been through all those pressure situations already,
Mm.
and then they're good to go, and potentially win those sorts of games that they didn't quite get to do in the tournament this week.
Yeah, definitely. They put a good fight to Football St George, and obviously, in the end of that game, with the St George side winning, it's definitely easy to understand that Football St George have won for the theatrics, especially with Abdullah Karim being a part of that team. How do you think these sort of moments of magic that he can inspire brought them up to third?
Well, it really is the Abdullah Karim way. Like, I remember commentating the World Cup and absolutely losing my head on comms as he scored goals late in those games.
Yes,
It's
I rewatched that in preparation for this interview, Australia Uruguay, that last minute goal after the red card, and it's just you going absolutely nuts on the mic, and
and
that's what motivated me to write this question.
yeah, no, and it's a moment that I still look back and think of and go, as on a personal note, the fact that I'm commentating a World Cup match involving a national, involving Australia on Australian soil is crazy, but more relevant to this answer, it's that Abdullah knows when to appear. Like, you can have what some people might say might be a fairly quiet game for 35 minutes, and then he'll just lift and find things that other players can't find. His game sense and intuition is incredible, and because of that, he can put teams into positions that they're not used to and capitalize on that. And he did that in the third place playoff. He found his way to that whole team, got them together and got them through the difficulty that is extra time. Like, you've already played 40 minutes, a regular amount of football at the end of an incredibly long week, and then suddenly to go, we've got to find a win in the next 10 minutes. It's hard.
Hmm.
And that experience and that ability to create something out of nothing that we just know from Abdullah Karim, yeah, it really was the difference in that game, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was a very interesting game, and I remember seeing that fourth goal go in, sneaking it through the strikers' defense, and it's just like a reminder of how entertaining the whole sport of power chair football can be, really.
It's a great advertisement for the sport when we can have these exciting, thrilling matches with
Mm.
incredible results, and then we can turn to like a kiddo who's in a wheelchair and go, this can be you.
Mm.
Even if you might not. You look at all the other sports in the world and go, I won't ever be able to play rugby league or AFL or whichever other sports you prefer. And then we can go, no, you will get to play team sport. It's right here. It's power chair football, and it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, moments like that are what we should be advertising for future generations.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about the teams in the third place playoff for long enough, Tom. I think it's time to move to the big game. The finalists: Newcastle Jets, Melbourne City. We'll start with the losers. Newcastle Jets, right? They've lost two consecutive finals now. How do you think the bridesmaid becomes the bride?
Well, it's weird, right? Because we go back in time a couple of years, and we talk about the dominance of the Newcastle Jets. We talk
Hmm.
about how Newcastle have been the best team in the country.
Yes.
And then we're now, 2025 Club Championships have wrapped up, and now they've got two silver medals. And we go, what happened? And honestly, I don't think anything has changed at Newcastle. I still think that they are the incredibly powerful team that we know them for. Obviously, we've had the big change is that now it's kind of obviously Dimitri, I think, is still the spiritual leader of that team, but I think Ryan is running the show.
Hmm.
And I much like how I could spend hours talking about Cooper Pelini, I could spend hours talking about Ryan Seck and just the brilliance that he is going to bring for Australia in the next decade or so in this sport. And if we do manage to get powerchair football to the Paralympics in 2032, which I'm confident we will be able to, I would be confident in saying that Ryan probably captains the Australian team at that tournament. I'd say it's certainly a big call that I'm making, but I certainly think if I had to pinpoint now who leads that team at that potential tournament, it's Ryan that I've got my eyes on.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. He's a weapon of a player and a champion of a bloke, and I don't think he's a better fit right now.
and to bring that back to the original question, I think Newcastle need to stay the course. What they're doing right now is working, and I think the main thing that's happened that's led to Newcastle not winning the last 2 years is factors outside their control. And we'll get onto those in a minute when we start talking about Melbourne City. But I think it's that other teams have created squads for the tournament which have been better for that week than Newcastle. But I
Mm.
think Newcastle as a team, as an organisation, have done everything right. And I think as a result of that, even though they're not getting the trophies that they want, they're reaping the benefits of it, and they will be getting those results down the line. I think that yes, they've been the bridesmaids for 2 years. That shows that the system is still working when you compare to all of the other teams in the league. That they're
Mm.
still up there, no matter what. They're always there, and they're always getting those big results. So no, I think in order for Newcastle to get back to the top, keep doing what they're doing. It's working fine.
And I think, they're a very strong side even in the state comp. So I think they've proven their overall ability to win. So I think it's just that persistence you say, Tom. Moving over to the final team in this competition, Melbourne City, the winners of this competition. They brought one of the strongest teams the competition has seen, in my memory at least. Firstly, before we get into the question I wrote, Tom, have you seen a better team than City before I've been at Nationals?
I'm just running through the memory banks, and the only other candidate I can come up with is the Hills United side that had Chris Suffield, Chris Turnbull, Josh Merkus, Jack Parry, and I think Beck Evans was in that team as well. That was the only other time that I can remember so many players from such a diverse, geographic region coming together for a tournament. So I think that's the only other time I can think of a team like the one that we saw this year from Melbourne City in this competition. It's the only other team I think would be on paper similar in makeup.
Yeah, so I think the main thing that I recognize watching Melbourne this week is they are such a strong team in communication and in overall cohesion, just the way they work as a unit rather than as four individual players. How well do you think this was to them winning the comp?
Obviously, cohesion and communication is the essential fundamental of any team. If a team cannot communicate and cannot click on court, they will not get the results. But I think I'm a little bit differently here to you, Jax. There were moments in the tournament this week where they were definitely communicating and coherent well, but there was a lot of I think there were moments where they actually weren't communicating and being as cohesive as you would have liked them to when you consider the players that they have. And certainly there are some of the games where I look down through the list where they didn't put as big of a result as you might have thought.
Hmm.
Like there's they only beat Hills United by 2 goals on the Wednesday,
Yeah.
and I look at that and I go, this is a team like we should not underestimate what this team has done. This team has looked at a competition and said there are 12 games to win the trophy. They to win all 12, and they won all 12.
Hmm.
But I think the way that they won those games, it wasn't as monumental as you would have thought they were. And obviously, this is a lot coming from a player who is now 2 wooden spoons in a row. Um, but I don't know. I didn't see it. I, I, I'm probably going against the grain here, but I just didn't see the same, you know, it worked. It obviously worked. They got the trophy. But I don't know. I don't know if it was the best advertisement for anything, and I don't know if it was. If you look at the players they've got, and like you've got four players who are national team players one who's pretty close to it, and then the English import Chris Gordon. That team should wipe the floor with everyone.
Hmm.
But they didn't wipe the floor with everyone. They wiped the floor with most people and then got out of jail a couple of times. We talked about 4-3 Melbourne versus Newcastle. Newcastle led that game 10 minutes in by 2 goals. But the Melbourne City team should not have been in that position. They got out of it, which is a real testament to them, but they should never have been there in the first place. And so, whilst what Melbourne City did this week is incredible, I'm not confident in, I've got my eyes on APFA Cup and potentially the World Cup next year, and you imagine the core players are going to be probably from this Melbourne City side, and I go, if they're not able to do big things in every single game right now, how are they going to go when they need to do big things in the green and gold? And yeah, as I say, that might not be the happiest thought, and it might not be the most agreed upon, resolution from this week. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm worried, and I think that's a reflection on it's been a bit of a rocky road for Australia since the last World Cup. Like, we hosted that World Cup, we went backwards, and it's still. I don't think we've stopped the slide in the last 2 years, and it just gives me warning bells about our future as a nation. And I think there's a lot to work on, and I know, thanks to my position in QPFA, that there is a lot of stuff being worked on, and that the future long term I think is good, but I think short term we're still not in the greatest of positions, and I think that there's a lot more pain that we've got to go through in terms of results before we start really firing like it looked like we were going to be doing pre-COVID when we got to 4th in the World Cup in the US. And I know this topic was mostly about Melbourne City, but I mean, because they've got the national coach and so many of the national players there, really that Melbourne City team is largely an Australian team, and I think that they should have been easier for them if that was going to do well internationally.
Yeah, no, I 100% get that, what you mean. I think I just, obviously, when I wrote that question, I was like seeing some of the highlights of it and not focusing on the lack of communication that they displayed in other games. But I think it is really interesting to see your take on it and sort of broaden my perspective of that overall.
Yeah, like, again, I don't want to make it look like they were a bad team. They were an incredible team, and they did pull the results when they needed to pull the results. They probably, if they were going to be really the best national team that we could put forward, they probably should put double digits on most teams. And they did.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do see that. And Tom, we've now recapped every single team at this year's national tournament. So I guess all there's left to say is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think we need to say a big thank you to everyone involved in running this tournament. This tournament has been, it's a lot of work and planning has got into it, and it took a lot of people to get it done, both from the organising committee here in Queensland, all the referees that came through, all the volunteers that came through, and then to the 10 teams that came along that made this an incredible tournament. The support staff, for everyone involved, Nissan Arena, the sponsors, Devenge Group, QTAD, and Hand in Hand Support Services. Their contributions to the tournament were very valuable. They helped us keep costs down for all the teams relative to what we should have been charging, which is excellent because we know how money isn't the easiest in the world of powerchair football. The future, like the clubs of Australia, there's a lot for everyone to work on, and I think the next big tournaments will be good. Obviously, we're hosting APFA Cup here in Brisbane, and then beyond that, I don't quite know what the tournament calendar is. Obviously, New South Wales League has only just gotten underway. Queensland League, I think we've got currently one more round left. We'll see if we can get any more rounds, but there's one more round left in our local league. See, there's always football happening, and so long as there's always football happening, we will have a strong national level tournament, and I really can't wait to see what happens next year. And I'd love to see if Melbourne City defend their title, or if anyone else is able to find a way to beat them.
And if they aren't able to defend their title, Tom, who's your pick?
Look, I'm going to be boring and say that Newcastle will get back to the top step. If Melbourne City aren't the team that does it. I just think that the structure and club culture that Newcastle has is second to none, and I think that they, in any tournament that we have here in Australia, really probably are the favourites unless something else happens, like we've seen the last couple of years with the players that have been brought in by other teams. But I think if you look at just the Australian players that are here, Newcastle have the best team, hands down, in the country. Is the way that I look at it, just of purely Newcastle players and not, the players that teams pick up through being from the same state or from getting them from overseas.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that wraps up everything we needed to cover, Tom. Thank you so much for being on.
No, thank you, Jax. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have a good chat for. Well, it's probably been about an hour, I reckon, that we've been chatting for now.
55 minutes according to OBS Studio.
And I really hope that we get to do this at some point in the future, because I've absolutely enjoyed it. I'd like to thank everyone who's listened to the podcast with me this week. I think I'm the first Queenslander that you've had on the show.
Yeah.
So far, Jax. So it's a big honour, and I really hope to be back here in the future. And I really hope that all of your listeners have enjoyed hearing me have a bit of a ramble about all the teams involved in the tournament this year.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on.
Been an absolute pleasure.
You can get involved in powerchair football here in New South Wales as an athlete, coach, referee, or volunteer by visiting the New South Wales Powerchair Football Association website, linked in the show notes. Our season takes place in Glenwood at the Valentine Sports Park from the 15th of February 2025 to the 12th of July 2025 every Saturday. Contact info@nswpfa.org.au for more information. Just a quick note that the views of this podcast are mine and mine alone. The opinions and thoughts expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the NSWPFA. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can follow us at Powered by Football Pod on Instagram, join our Facebook group, Powered by Football Podcast, or follow our Twitter account, Powered by Pod. Thanks for listening.